Amy, that song was just, it's gorgeous, and you do such a good job. It really spoke to my heart because something that I've learned is that on the journey to creating, you do have to be brave. And I want to share a little bit of my journey, and there will be some stories from the 3 different books that I've published, the first one being a self-published book called Success is a Given, Reading the Signs While Reinventing Your Life. The second one being Stop Workplace Drama, and then of course No Drama Leadership, which published on Cinco de Mayo. But the journey started, and a lot of times the voice of our spirit does start from some sort of drama. We get uncomfortable if we don't know how to listen, or even if we do. It starts from what I call the 3 life tragedies. So I want to share that with you. The 3 life tragedies is, the first step is when you know that you want something more, but you don't know what it is. Has anybody ever been there? I know something's missing. I know I want something more, but I don't know what it is. The second tragedy is when you know what it is, but you really don't believe it's possible. So you kind of get stuck and you're frustrated. And then the third step in that journey, the third life tragedy, is when you know what it is, you believe it's possible, but now you have to take action. And that's really scary. So you can go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And my 3 life tragedies started at about the age of 35. And in the work I've done, I've noticed that 35 to 40 is about when that starts to rumble, maybe 32 even. We know that we want something more. We know that we're built for something more. And my something more was getting out of a job that I had worked at for many years at that time. I'd started at the age of 18. And I was a factory worker at Kraft Foods, doing blue-collar work on the lines, packing cheese, driving a forklift, working to dismantle the equipment for sanitation. And you go to work, you work by the same people every day, you wear a hairnet and a uniform, you clock in, you clock out, and the best part of your day is when you look up at the clock and you realize it's time to rotate. And I wanted to rotate off of that career, but I didn't know how, because that's all I'd ever known. And there was a 401k, and there was a certain hourly amount of money, and I was bringing in half of the income. And so I was going through the 3 life tragedies, and it started at age 35, and it took me 5 years to process through that next right step. If I were brave, what would I do just today? The vision was too far out. Well, there's a picture of me sitting on the forklift. That's a uniform and hairnet. That's not blonde hair. And I remember that day when I took that picture. It was the last day that I worked at the factory, and I said, I want to look back 15 or 20 years, and I want from wisdom to know that I'm a creator. And I don't know how that's going to happen, but I want this picture to remind me. And back then there was no Facebook, no social media, so this was a scanned picture from an actual probably Kodak film. The biggest lesson that I am learning and continue to learn and continue to share with other people is that I'm a creator and you are a creator. And when we see other people as creators, we quit putting them into the victim mindset in our own minds. We quit boxing people in. We quit falling for the story that they're telling about their lives. We may have compassion, but we see them differently. We start to see ourselves differently. And in this third book that I wrote, No Drama Leadership, I developed a model, and Unity will so get this. But the idea is that whatever we experience, we will express in some way. It goes in a circle, and at any point you can change it, whether it's through the physical or the metaphysical. The experience may be your history, your mindset, your feelings, your thoughts about something, your DNA that you were born with, and that becomes your experience and your way of understanding life, and then that expresses in certain ways. It expresses in being brave, holding back, making decisions. So if you want to know what you're creating, start to think about express experience. What am I expressing? Because that's showing what I really believe about myself and about life and about other people. And it's a journey. It's not a one-time deal. One of the ways that we express that we're a creator is through our clarity. And in this journey of working with people one-on-one and in groups, what I've learned is that clarity is the most difficult piece of our lives. We are not clear most of the time. In fact, if you ask anybody what they want, most of the time you will not get a real clear answer. You'll get a story about, you need to understand my background first, or you'll need to understand what happened to me last week, or you'll need to understand about the barriers that I face because of my health challenges, my education, my parents, the alcoholism in my family. And so we don't really answer the question, what do I want? Because once you claim it, you now have a responsibility, and that's to get out of those 3 life tragedies. So it's easy to talk about what's not happening, and therefore we avoid answering the question, what do I want? Because we will make up stories about, well, God must not want me to do that, or it must not have been meant to be because after all it was so difficult, and if God wanted me to do it, it would be so easy. And the stories we make up become barriers. Have you heard that before? Have you experienced that within your own life? So in Stop Workplace Drama, I wanted to have a way for people to visually understand the journey of clarity and what are the barriers that stand in the way. So I developed a new model and a new language that I call the language of the island. And the idea is that, and you know this because you're Unity, there's only 2 things we really want, and that's peace and prosperity. We want to expand, and we want to have a sense of peace about that expansion. And even if we cannot expand, we still want to have peace and lose the resistance. There's only 2 reasons we really want anything, whether that's more money, whether it's a big house on the lake, whether it's a relationship. We want peace and prosperity. And so we're always trying to get from point A to point B. We're always in the boat, whether it's just ourselves or with our team, to the island called peace and prosperity. Even big corporations that are looking at their year-end finances, did we get to peace and prosperity? But what happens is we have a barrier, and that barrier is the shark. And in Stop Workplace Drama, I call that shark drama. And my definition for drama is any obstacle to peace or prosperity, whether that's just in your mind or whether it's a reality. And what happens is we see the barrier and then we say, my shark, but you don't understand my shark. And then the focus becomes about the barrier instead of the island, and all of a sudden that's the reality from the boat from which we sit. So it becomes about the shark. And then what happens is we lose alignment. We lose alignment because we get distracted. And the only reason we lose alignment is because we're not brave. We don't see that we don't want to feel what we're feeling. So I have a story I want to share with you that I put in this second book, Stop Workplace Drama, and my publishers, Wiley, did not want this story in the book. They said, this is not business-like enough. Your high-end audience isn't going to relate to this. And I knew differently, because we're all human beings no matter where you are on the totem pole. We are all human beings. We all have really basically the same experiences, and I fought for this story, so I hope you enjoy it. I was on a radio show one time, and I was talking about my first book, actually, and this is where this story came from, and it merged with the second one. But I was talking about where we get stuck and how we start to believe that what we want doesn't want us, and we have drama. And during the break, a man called me and he said, I don't want to be on the radio. I don't want people to hear me, but I want you to help me. I think you can, because I have a lot of drama. And he said, I want some coaching. And I said, well, I can't coach you in 5 minutes because that takes a lot longer. You have to feel understood. We have to go through this process, and I have to ask you a lot of questions, so I'm willing to consult if you can take straight talk. And he said, I'm willing. So we got that settled, and I said, basically, what's your shark? And he said, here's my issue. I was married. I have 2 boys. I loved being a father, but then through a series of incidences that happened, we ended up getting a divorce, and it was pretty rough. And then I had to move 400 miles away in order to make the money I needed to pay for the child support and so on. And now my ex-wife and I are at such odds that she won't let me see my boys. And she won't let me be a dad to them, and we're battling. And so my question is, why is she doing this to me? So I thought about it for a moment, and I thought, most of the time when someone asks us a question like that from their own experience, we make up a story. We say, well, let me tell you about what Gallup says. 1 out of every 2 marriages, they fail. And so how long were you married? And statistically speaking, this is supposed to happen. And also when you have kids, it adds to the drama. And by the way, what did you do? Did you mess around? Did you gamble? Did you cheat? Because I can tell you how women are, and we go off into some distracted story that does not help the person. So I took a breath and I said, I do not know. And he said, well, I thought you were the Stop Your Drama lady. And I said, I am. But if I told you what I thought happened, I'd be making up a story because I'm not her. And the truth is, she may not know. But obviously, there's some drama between the 2 of you. So you've asked the wrong question. And he said, well, what is the right question? And I said, the right question is, what do you want? And he said, that's easy. Now let me just pause to say, in the workplace, when I ask someone what they want, it's never easy. They say, well, let me tell you what Sally did to me, and let me tell you why it's not fair and why I have seniority and I'm never going to put up with this. And what I teach leaders to do is get people back on track to say, I get all that, but the question is, what do you want? Because until you can answer that, you can't get what you want. You're back into story and distraction. But he said, this is easy. He said, I want to be a good dad to my kids. And I said, then I can help you in 2 seconds. And he said, okay. So I said, my first question is, are you willing then to spend your money, take the trip 400 miles away, go once a month, every 2 months, once a quarter, whatever you can afford, to go stay in a hotel and be with your kids so you can have a relationship with your kids? Guess what he said? He said, but I shouldn't have to. So let me show you what that looks like. This is the island called Be a Good Dad to Your Kids. And this is the island called But I Shouldn't Have to. They're two different islands. There's an integrity gap. And I said, I didn't say you should have to. I said, are you willing to make the trip? And he said, but it's not fair. And I said, oh, no, because this is the island called It's Not Fair, and this is the island called Be a Good Dad. Of course, I was not doing that visually. I was just speaking it. And he said, well, then I'm willing. And I said, then problem solved. Because willingness is the fulcrum point of change, and it takes courage to be willing to do something that's difficult, that's not fair, that you shouldn't have to do. But I knew, too, that the trick really is in the journey, the action journey, not just in the decision, because he's going to get tested over and over and over on his real clarity. And that test is going to come up when, let's suppose, since we're making all this up anyway, the wife plays a game. And she says, oh, I thought you were coming next week. The kids are at summer camp. Or the next time when the kids get in the car with him and they say, Mom says you're a deadbeat dad and you didn't care about us or you wouldn't have moved. And he's going to get triggered and say, well, let me tell you what your mother has done. And he's now lost direction, hasn't he? He's lost his clarity. James 1:18, one of my favorite verses, a double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways. When we get distracted, when we look at the shark, when we get double-minded, and it's not about avoiding the reality or not facing what is real and true in the physical world, but when we become double-minded and make excuses, we become very unstable, and you start to know that by your inner alignment. So what we have to do is we have to develop supervision, and we heard about vision this morning, the way to see. Give me the eyes to see, supervision. We have to see what's possible. I've written a lot of articles on my blog about enlightened leadership and what it is and how we can identify enlightened leaders. And they're all around us, but we don't see them because maybe they have a disability, maybe they're young, maybe they have a weight problem or maybe some other physical problems because they're living in a human body having this experience like we all are. We want them to be perfect. But if we can open the eyes to see, we can see the enlightenment in each other, and that can help light everyone's candle. So I want to share a story that I found to be quite fascinating when I was doing the research for this book and even afterwards. This story isn't in the book, but I think it's a marvelous story. There was a school that was for special needs children. Many of them had trouble with their communication. They either couldn't talk or they couldn't process information a certain way without feeling or touching. And so every child in the school, there was maybe 12 or 13 children, had these challenges. And what the teachers decided was that the kids needed iPads to be able to learn more efficiently. And guess what? There was some entity that said no. And this entity is the same entity that's in every single organization. The more work I do, I see that this entity is important that we put a "the" in front of it. The Pope, the President, the Czar. And this one's called the, and the first name is Bud, and the second name is Jet. The budget. The budget said no. The budget isn't working. We're working on the budget. The budget said no. So that was the reality. The budget said no. There's no money in the budget. But there was one enlightened leader that decided that that didn't have to be the truth, that while it was true in one realm, in a higher level of consciousness, it was not true. And this enlightened leader quickly went to what we have now available to us, social media, posted one of those sites where you can donate, and within 3 or 4 hours, the budget changed, and there was money for those kids. And that enlightened leader was 12-year-old Cassidy Huff, who had a disability herself. She was born with extreme dwarfism. She was having her 33rd surgery, and she was in that very class. Is that inspiring? Wow. Give me the eyes to see. If I were brave, What would I do? What would be the next step? Instead of looking at some outside entity, the budget, which we create and we own, and yet it tells us what to do. Isn't that interesting? It's about the action journey as well, and that involves taking personal responsibility. If it's only about what I think is true and giving voice to it and sitting in a dark closet meditating, the reality is we don't really have faith, because faith takes bravery and it takes action. But someone will say, this is James 2:18, one of my favorite verses, but someone will say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith without your works, and I will show you my faith by my works. Well, I have faith that the budget's going to turn around. Well, I have faith that something's going to evolve. I have faith that we're going to attract the right donors. But Cassidy says, you know what? I have faith that I'm a creator. I have faith that I'm going to make some action happen. And I don't know the outcome. Maybe I won't get enough money, but through my next step, I know that I'm taking an act of faith, which is full responsibility. You see, we have to take full responsibility for the energy that we bring to the world. That's the only thing we can really take responsibility for. Then again, everything is energy. We have intentions, behaviors, words, feelings, choices, and judgments. And if you'll notice, a lot of what we have to take responsibility for is in the invisible realm. And it's easy to say, well, I didn't take responsibility for that action, or I messed up here and I didn't take responsibility for the outcome. But what is it that led to the outcome? It was the experience underneath. It was a thought. It was a judgment. It was an idea. And we haven't learned how to bring the invisible into the visible. In fact, I so often ask my audiences, and it's a trick question. I'm going to share the secret with you here. I'll say, would you agree that we need to nip drama in the bud? And everybody goes, yes. And I'll say, but that's the problem, because the bloom is cut, but it's like a field of dandelions, and underneath there's a root system that the next year it just goes into that field and it just multiplies. So we often look at the bloom and we think we understand, but there's something invisible underneath, always. And they work together. So we have to become responsible for the energy that we bring to the world. So I want to share a story with you, and I want to check in on how much time do I have. Okay. So I was working with a client that, a man that was having some trouble in his workplace. He was a contractor, and then he got hired as an employee. And when he got hired as an employee, he started realizing that the other employees didn't really support him. There was really no orientation. There was a lot of drama. And the boss who hired him was also new, and they had a relationship. And so now the boss is kind of in the middle between this drama that's going on between him and the other employees. And when he called me, he was furious and he was angry, and he was talking in a fast voice, and his heart was pounding, and he was talking about what idiots he worked with and how clueless they were and how they didn't deserve to be there. And on he went with his drama, and I let him do that for a moment. And then I said, take a breath, and now tell me what you want. Well, he didn't know. He was mad. He was angry. He wanted something. And what I've learned is that there's really only 3 reasons people complain. Either it's a habit, which we all have habits of complaining, but the other 2 reasons are we want something and we don't know what it is, or we know what it is and we don't think it's possible. The same 3 life tragedies that I told you about earlier. And so I said, let me help you get clear, first of all. What do you want? And since we were saving time, I said, let me give you 3 choices. One choice is you just want to be right and tell me how bad they were. I make you feel better by agreeing. I can do that. Number 2 is you want me to help you get them to be fired, and I can't do that because that's an organizational issue, and you're not the organization, you're an individual. But number 3 is I can help you see this shark as a stepping stone for your next level of leadership. Which do you want? And he said, well, that's kind of hard to say. And I thought, wow, really? Okay. So I said, you know what, I'm going to give you a tool right now that's going to help you with everything. I said, are you willing to believe that if through your leadership you could get along better with your people that you don't like right now, would you take that power? And he said, okay, I would. And I said, I'm going to tell you what you need to do. We're going to play like you're a horse at the horse races, and there are 4 different gates, and you get to choose the gate you start out of. And that's going to determine whether or not you win the race. That placement is. And so I'm going to give you the prize, but the prize is not going to be the purse or the roses. The prize is going to be you get along with these guys that you think are idiots. You at least get along with them and can understand their point of view. Would you take it? He said, okay. I said, so the first gate is called they are an idiot. The second gate is called they don't really care and I don't care. The third gate is called I'm curious. And the fourth gate is called this is not fair, or I need to defend myself. which gate do you need to choose? And he said, the gate called I need to defend myself. And I said, no, you need to choose the gate called I am curious, because from that place you can find understanding. And that's in the invisible realm. And guess what he said to me? Now, this is why people need unity. He said, can you give me a book to memorize the things you're telling me so that I can go in and get what I want? And I said, this isn't about memorizing a book, but if you're going to buy books, here's mine, right? You need 10 of them, by the way. And so I said, this is not about memorizing something. It's not about the physical journey as much as it's about your own awareness and where you're starting and what is contributing to your problems. We have to become the creator of our own experiences. I want to end with a story that was so true for me that I get reminded of this all the time. I got the opportunity to go to Canada, and my assistant went with me. And she lives in a different place than here. She lives in North Carolina, but she went with me, and on our day off, we went to the city of Quebec. And come to find out, there was something called a holy door that was happening, and we were so excited. Now, I'm not Catholic, so I didn't know about the holy door, and most Catholics don't really know about it either, but here's what it is. When a basilica has a jubilee, that's a year of celebration, the Pope can grant to that church, to that organization, a holy door. And a holy door is open for 1 year during the year of Jubilee, and it closes for 25 years. This was the only holy door in North America. And we were there on a day that it was open. And we were so excited because walking through the holy door, it's a lot of ritual. The understanding is that we walk 1,000 miles on this journey, and there's one time when we can enter through a holy door. It was blessed by the Pope, and that we can touch a statue or a picture of Christ. And the woman explained it to us. We were getting chills, and we were like, oh my gosh, because we meditate, we do all these spiritual things when we travel. And we were excited, and she said, and then you have a renewed life. You're stepping into this new life from that intention. And we're like, okay, let's do this. We walk in and we see people kneeling and doing things we don't understand. We don't see any statue where we can touch a hand. We're not finding that. We see this glass partition. We walk through. The church is gorgeous. This is what it looks like. And we walk through the middle, and I had this sick feeling that I didn't know what was going on. And I turned to her, and my assumption is that I'm always wrong and everybody else has it figured out. That's kind of one of my patterns. And I said, where's the holy door? She goes, that's what I was wondering. I'm like, really? I'm like, it must have been that hallway that we walked through, or maybe that glass partition. I'm not sure. She's like, so we go and we have a drink of water. And in Canada, they don't really believe in ice, it seems like. And it was very hot that day. And my Heather was in a terrible mood, and she's never in a bad mood. If anyone's going to be in the bad mood, it's going to be me, and she's cheering me up. And so I said, what's wrong? And she goes, oh, they don't believe in ice here, and I'm just so parched I can hardly stand it. I said, it's not about the ice, it's because you missed the holy door. And I said, we can walk up that hill and go through it again. She goes, no, I don't want to. I'm just in a bad mood about it. She said, we had this idea and it didn't happen. And I just kind of thought about this, and that evening, I always journal and meditate when I travel. I want to really get into the feeling and spirit and get rid of all my stuff and all my attachments and all my drama that's always there for me. And I wrote something just for Heather, but I wrote it for myself too. And I said, Heather and I walked through the holy door, and Heather was angry because we got saved and we didn't know it. And we missed the holy door, and we were angry, but here's what I know. I know that we do not need scarcity, the Pope, a certain place and time, or a certain time of the year to walk through a holy door. That through our decision, we can walk through a holy door at any moment, and that is just something that we agree to or don't agree with. It has nothing to do with the laws of gravity or any other natural laws. We can choose every single day of our own making to walk through a holy door at any time, because we are always fully loved and fully connected. And I want to read this because this is, again, one of my favorite scriptures, and I grew up just very grounded in Scripture. For I'm persuaded that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, or any other creature shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Jesus Christ our Lord. We are always complete and whole, lacking nothing. We are always at choice. We are always creators. So the question is not, am I a creator? You are a creator whether you know it or not. The real question is, what are you creating? Namaste.